If you're into aviation photography like me, then stick around with this video because I'm going to take you guys southside here at Manchester Airport. We're going to go through the equipment I use and my workflow, camera settings, to gather all of the content here on our channel on Airliners Live, and that includes the photos we post on our social medias alongside how we gather images for thumbnails and things like that. So we got a bag full of camera gear. Let's get cracking. Now, with nearly every trip I take to Manchester Airport, I always have 100 to 400mm lens in the bag. That's really a must for me on my aviation photography trips. Anything less than that, I'm really struggling to get in and get the detail on the planes here at Manchester Airport. And we're relatively close to the action here as well. So it's well worth, if you can afford it, getting a lens of within 100 to 400mm. 100 to 300 would be great as well. But as I say, anything less than 100mm, you may struggle to get right in to the action. Now, two of the most important settings when you're doing any aviation photography is aperture and shutter speed. These are going to determine how much of the aircraft is in focus, and it will also remove any shaking you may impose on the camera when you're taking the picture as well. Now, a basic rule of thumb that I kind of live by with aviation photography is I don't tend to go any less than 7.1. This, although doesn't help you too much when it's on a darker day, it will ensure both the front to the back of the aircraft are in focus if the aircraft's head on to you. Now, you can go a bit lower than that if the aircraft is side on to you to get that little bit of extra light. But here at Manchester, when we're getting them awesome line-up shots, you really want to be at 7.1. And for me, my lens tends to perform better at f8, so I leave mine on f8 9 times out of 10. Second to that, you really want to make sure you've got a good shutter speed. Now, this varies based on the style of photography you're doing, but today for these line-up shots, I want to make sure that the aircraft is nice and crisp. We can see the background with the tower there as well, so we don't want to be having any sort of low shutter speed. So for me, a general rule of thumb, and for every photographer, should be your shutter speed should be no less than your focal length. So I'm shooting a maximum focal length of 400mm today, so I want to make sure that my shutter speed is no less than 1/400. And for me today, just to make sure I'm not having any shaking, because there is a bit of wind today, I'm shooting between 1/640th and 1/800th of a second, and that ensures that any vibration in the camera won't be seen on your photos, because you'll be seeing that in terms of blurry text. Maybe it's not quite pin sharp, so always make sure you got a nice fast shutter speed if you can. Now, for any new photographers, the dials on the top of the camera may seem a little bit daunting, but they are actually there to help you, and they can really kind of take the weight off what you're doing while you're trying to get your photography and let the camera do the work. Most modern cameras these days are great at sort of maintaining exposure on your behalf so that you can focus on framing the shot that you want. And one of the great ways of doing that for aviation photography is by using aperture priority. Now, what that means is that the camera will handle shutter speed and ISO, and you will input the aperture which you would like the camera to stay at, and then it will maintain the exposure of the image by adjusting the shutter speed and adjusting the ISO. This is a great way of making sure that the depth of field is not affected, but you don't have to worry about constantly adjusting your shutter speed to make sure the image is well lit. You can find that on the top dial. At the moment I'm shooting in manual, so you'll see it in M mode. However, if you switch the dial to A, that will put the camera into aperture priority. All you need to then do is set your aperture, set it to f7.1 or f8 in this case, and let the camera do the rest. One final setting to check in aperture priority mode is that the ISO is set to auto. Again, you can adjust this if you wish. If you're in a really bright sunny day, you can force the camera to use ISO 100, but that will then only allow the camera to adjust the shutter speed. So allowing the camera to adjust the ISO as well. With modern software, that really isn't a problem, guys. With things like Adobe Lightroom, they have an incredible AI noise reduction feature, which for me, I'm really not worried about shooting all the way up to 4000 ISO these days, because it can be handled and edited perfectly fine in post. Now, as with most people, I never really leave house without my mobile phone, and one of the apps I have on here is Flight Radar 24, and that's a great tool for any plane spotter, any aviation photographer, because you can see what's coming and going on the airfield. You know when the aircraft you've come to take a picture of is on the move, and it just gives you some really great situational awareness down at the airport. It's a free application, you can get it downloaded as long as you're happy to see a few adverts, or they do have some fairly priced sign-ups as well if you do want to get rid of those adverts and unlock a few new features. But it's an incredible tool, highly recommend it if you're getting into aviation photography. And for those people who maybe can't afford a high-end camera, or even a camera with a decent zoom lens, you'll be really happy to know that modern phones these days are absolutely incredible for taking pictures. So again, don't be discouraged about getting into plane spotting, guys, if you've only got a mobile phone. And for example, on this next aircraft, I'm going to put a picture up that was taken on my phone. Here it is. Now, as with any photography, you really want to try and have the sun on your back, get the sun behind you so that your subject in front of you is being lit up in the best possible light. Now, here at Manchester, we don't see the sun, but I always do try and make sure that the subject is well lit. Now, when it comes to framing, however, now this really is where you can be completely creative. Go out there, try different things. Some people prefer to get the nice side-on profiles of the planes that they're taking a picture of so that they can see the whole livery, the registration, everything like that. However, you can be completely creative. I prefer the more head-on shots as the aircraft's turning. Again, it's just personal preference, guys. There is no right and wrong when it comes to aviation photography. You can even go crazy like this and punch right in and pick out some key details of the planes as well, which is a really cool thing to do. It's something a bit different. Again, be creative with this, guys. This is totally up to you. Now, if like us here at Manchester, not only do you have jet aircraft, but you have prop aircraft, then you will need to adjust your shutter speed. So for that, I'd recommend switching the dial to S to shutter priority, or going into manual and adjusting your aperture and your shutter speed. You really want to slow the shutter speed down to about 1/125th of a second to get that prop blur. So that wraps up my techniques and tips and tricks for aviation photography, especially those who are new to aviation photography. This video is definitely more geared towards you guys. Now I'm going to get these photos home and look out for another video about how I edit my aviation photography. And if you found this video useful, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course if you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments below. But thank you very much for watching. My name is Martin from Airliners Live. I'll see you on the next one.